Welcome to the Avance Podcast. I'm Dan.
And I'm Nick.
And it's a very wet and rainy week.
It's slightly monsoon season, yes.
I was looking at my pictures from last year, and I was in McCall, and it was beautiful and sunny, and I was riding our little Honda monkeys around the lake, and it was beautiful.
Well, I mean, if things go well, we can be doing that in 2 weeks from now.
Right. And
so
this
get you back there.
Yeah. And this year I'm looking at how I'm going to put it in 4-low to go to the driveway. Yeah, no, anyway.
The small river that's coming into your home?
Yeah. In my house.
Yeah, you're fine.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, one of the unfortunate side effects of that, and I'm going to use this for our Carter Automotive Group tip of the week, is that I still have to mow my damn lawn, which is like 2 acres of lawn. And I've got a nice riding lawnmower and all that. And you're like, why is this on your podcast? Because I had to find an interesting way to keep mowing that lawn, or I would have another field. Because rain, sun, rain, sun, rain, sun. It's a good problem to have. Sorry, California and the rest of the South. I know you guys are having it tough. We're having the opposite problem. Well, the problem is all that stuff sticks to the mower. And even with a really good mower, it just clogs it up like crazy. So I got creative. And a long time ago on this podcast, I had a tip of the week that was interesting uses for products we own, especially from Griot's Garage.
Did you ceramic coat your lawnmower?
I ceramic coated the underside of my lawnmower deck.
I know you so well. It
was one of the best things I've ever done. So I was trying to keep my mind busy.
We got to tell the guys at Griot's you did that. That's
I'm
funny.
going to.
Okay.
And so I had to change the blades because I put on the grass catcher and all that because I'm just throwing grass over the lawn. And so while I'm under there, I cleaned it all out, right? So I grabbed the pressure washer and I cleaned the underside of the thing. And I'm like, I think it's to stop sticking. So I grabbed the Griot's ceramic 3-in-1, right?
Does anything stick to it?
No, I sprayed it out with some goof off because it's a lawnmower deck. Don't do this to your car. But I used that to just strip all the crap out of there after I pressure washed it and get it down to actual metal, right? So I sprayed the thing, and then I went and did the lawn. Nothing. Solved all my problems.
Wow.
So,
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
If you got the leftover Griot's ceramic, I'm just saying this stuff is... Do it to your lawnmower. And I hope you got a good laugh out of this because I got some weird looks, but it worked. So whatever.
Wow. Dan's obsessed. He'll clean anything and ceramic coat.
And apparently ceramic coat anything.
Sure.
So just saying it's a weird one, but it was damn useful. So you know what?
Did not see that coming. Did not see that coming.
So that's your Carter Automotive Group tip of the week. And I hope you got a good laugh out of my ingenuity.
Of course. Yes, as always.
Our guest this week probably has a smarter solution. Her name is Karen Salvaggio. She is a race car driver, motivational speaker. She is a veteran. She is a grandmother and obviously a mother as well. And let's see, what else? There's a lot under your resume here. I tried to read it all. You're into Sovereign and you race, let's see here, for Daytona Coupe. It's a performance replica, correct?
No, it's a Factory 5.
Factory 5, excuse me. Factory 5 Super Performance. So the one of the hardest cars to drive compared to anything modern because it's tail happy and has no power or anything, if I remember correctly.
They're actually quite fun. They really are. Actually, they're not as tail happy as the Cobra Roadsters. So I raced those for quite a while, and everything that I've run in that realm has been from Factory 5. So they're all replicas of the 1965. But the Daytona Coupe actually is 5 inches longer on a wheelbase than the Cobra Roadster. So the Roadster is a tail happy, fire breathing beast, whereas the Daytona Coupe, for those people, I guess I could relate it to, if you're a Corvette driver, like, no offense to Corvette drivers, I'm a Corvette driver too, the Corvettes make everybody look good because they are, they have tons of power, and if they start stepping out, you just roll in the throttle a little bit on dial and it just looks sweet. But you get into a high horsepower, tail happy, short wheelbase, and there is, once it steps out, it's gone. It's over.
Yeah, we drove some backdraft racing Cobras thanks to our friends at Park Place one time. They let us borrow some for a night and took them out and cruised them when they first got that line. Yeah, those are terrifying. I would imagine every Cobra. I had never driven a Cobra, period, up until that point. Had you?
No. Let alone one with a Coyote engine.
Yeah, his had a Coyote. Mine had a 427. And I was just like, and I've had a C6006, a C7, some other fun cars, but that was a different animal.
Cold tires. It was cold tires. It was,
yeah.
And I got a nice visit from the Washington State Patrol, so that was fun.
Yeah,
so
it lived up to the hype.
Yeah, yes it did.
Yeah,
yes,
well,
it did.
And you can't be stealthy when you're in one of those. It's not like you can.
Nope.
It's not like you can sneak around. And like my Daytona Coupe's not street legal. I've got just all I have to do is put windshield wipers on, and I'll have it through the, the inspection. But quite frankly, they were asking me last week. I was racing in Spokane with Sovereign, and we did this really cool Girl Scout group down at their main center there in Spokane. And so they're like, well, just bring the car. And I'm like, look, I'm going to have to trailer it down there. And they're like, just drive it. And I'm like, you don't sneak around in this car.
Yeah. You'll be able to hear me when I started up at the racetrack 10 miles away.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it sets off car alarms, and it's just, and it wasn't like they were really asking me to break the law, but they're like, well, can't you just kind of I'm like, no. You're not sneaking around. You don't sneak around in a Cobra. You're not sliding into town in a Daytona coupe without being noticed. Not going to happen.
I think the part I was the most proud about when I was driving is the fact that I kept all the skin and the hair on the back of my leg. Like I was smart enough to keep, get that long leg out. So yeah.
Yep. Watch the tailpipes.
So Karen, let's go back a little bit and talk about, how you got into cars, your love of cars, and how you kind of, built your life around it now. Like we said, with not only racing, but teaching and coaching and things like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm probably not unlike a lot of your viewers and Avance followers and other people. The interesting thing is that girls can like cars too. Girls can like the speed and performance. And from the time I was a kid, even when I had a little bicycle, I set up a road course out in the road in front of my house. I grew up in, by the way, you were talking about the ceramic coating stuff. I grew up in Pittsburgh, just out in the suburbs north of Pittsburgh. And so I was the person mowing the grass, and there's a lot of rain there. And I spent more time, peeling that stuff out from the underneath the lawnmower. So I wished I'd had some griots ceramic.
Yeah.
The putty.
You may open up a new thing for them.
Lawn care.
Lawn care, yeah, absolutely.
This newest lawn care product. Yeah, they just imagine and sell it over there, in Home Depot.
Until we figure out that it's not good for your lawn. So yeah.
Yeah, right. That's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've there's also in the speed and performance driving world, there's people that just like to go fast. It's acceleration. And then I think there's, a different group of us who like the actual rhythm of driving on a road course or going out on a spirited drive, whether it be on your sport bike or on in a really nice classic car or something that's performance based, and just taking on a road. And there's just something, just wonderful about it. And some of us just get great joy from that. And for me, I've always been the person that I want to go on the back roads. I'm trying, pushing the envelope. And then when I discovered we could actually start driving on the track, I'm like, oh, I'm in. I'm going to drive on a track. So I think the first time I actually drove on a racetrack was probably in the early 90s. But so growing up in Pennsylvania, there was no, there were no racetracks near me or any of that. There was maybe a dirt track somewhere over toward West Virginia, maybe. But I knew someday I was going to be a race car driver. And do you remember a show? You're probably both too young for this, but a show by the name of ABC Wide World of Sports.
Yeah.
Okay.
We grew up in the 80s. Yeah. In the early 80s, actually. Yeah. So, yeah.
So anyway, in Pennsylvania, Saturday afternoons, I was always glued to the TV watching, ABC Wide World of Sports and Jim McKay and all that. And they would actually go out to places like Talladega and Daytona and Le Mans and, Sebring. And then they'd go out and, Salt Lake, out to the flats there. And, and I was just like, and my parents thought I was insane, quite frankly. They're like, why is our daughter like this? My two brothers could have cared less, both of them. And my dad was like not a car guy at all. He's like Mr. Magoo. And they all thought I was nuts. And I'm like, no, I'll be over here watching Talladega and Darlington. Those pictures you see of Darlington when Cale Yarborough and them, they're fighting. I'm like, I watched that live, in 1960, whatever it was, So anyway, I just knew I was going to do this someday. And long story short, I wanted to go to college. I couldn't afford it. And I figured out, if you join the Air Force, you can get something called the GI Bill. And I come from a family that was a lot of veterans, and it was just a very natural thing to go into the military anyway. But I figured out, wow, so honestly, I went in the Air Force. I'd been a wrench working on things at home. They're like, hey, do you want to be an aircraft mechanic? And I'm like, will I get the GI Bill? They're like, yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm in. Next thing you know, I'm working on a flight line on B-52s. And I'm a crew chief. And I'm flying around the world doing cool stuff. And I'm like, hey, this is great. Fast forward, 6-8 years in, one of the guys who I was in the military with, he had a plane. He was a crew chief on, and he had a stock car. And he asked me if I'd come down to the stock car races in Central California and help him on his stock car one Saturday night. And I was like, sure, I'll go. So off I go. And he says, hey, take it out for some mud laps. And I was like, sure, I'm in. And I mean, sure. I'm in. Are you kidding? Like, and I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. And then you get in there and I'm like, I entered the track on the exit. I was like a total bonehead. I didn't even know where I was going. He's like, yeah, just go that way. And then next thing I know, he points me over here and there's cars coming at me. And they're like, you dumb girl. I mean, that was like 1980, 82, 83 in Central California. But once I got going the right direction and started building up speed, and it's mud and crap flying everywhere, but I was like, I love this. I'm in. So Monday, I went out and found a car that somebody had started building, and it was literally at the back end of a chicken ranch full of crap. It was a 1970 Olds Cutlass 442, and it had been roller brushed. It was awful. It was really horrific. Yeah, it was an ugly car. But to me, it was like, oh, angels singing. Here's my race car. So that's how I got started. And then I've pretty much had something in the garage ever since.
I'll get stuck getting these underachievers on the show.
Right. I mean, it's funny because I have a very good friend of mine that I worked at the private airport in Spokane for many years and had a couple of female friends that did airframe and power plant, and they loved it. And all the guys on the line used to love it because the women were smaller and they could get in places that the men would have to take the whole plane apart to get to. And so they used to say, it's like, women are the best at this because it's so awesome. So, I want to talk about you getting into racing. And the reason I'm going to this is we had the pleasure of interviewing Lynn St. James earlier this week. And she was talking about inviting women into the sports and not assuming that they're just going to show up. Did you have a hard time getting in? Was there some adversity, or you seem like the type of person to just be like, I'm here, here's my car, we're going to race, it doesn't matter who I am kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there's two answers to that. And a lot of it has to do with, like, we even think of it as a sliding scale. Depending on how you were raised and depending on what you were exposed to when you were young. So for me, my dad expected us, like I was up shingling a roof when I was like 8 years old. He's like, you can carry that square, get up there, and I mean, it was just, you're doing this stuff. And I never had a Barbie doll. I didn't even know what they were. And
me either. Yeah.
Come on, tell us the truth.
Okay, fine. I had a Cabbage Patch Kid.
But I mean, honestly, so for me, my dad always expected us to just do. And we had a boat, but you were the one building the dock. You were the one putting it in, taking it out, and you just did it. If you weren't raised that way or exposed that way, then to welcome more women in, I would say it'd be great if we, tried to expose young people to this sooner than later. Get them out to the track when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and help them at least understand this is a pathway that could work for you. How that works, there's probably 1,000 ways of getting that done. But the other thing is women don't tend to, and this is just kind of like a very generalized statement, but if a guy wants to learn how to fish, he's going to kind of probably go out to the lake and go figure it out, make mistakes, and who cares, and they'll drink a beer and it's over. Like, women don't tend to necessarily put themselves out there because there's a risk to it. And there's also, as a matter of fact, I can relate what we ran in Spokane. My times, we rained all weekend last weekend. My time, I go out and race in the rain, but I will not go off. I'm not going to have an incident, because if you're the girl and you have the incident, you own that. Where a guy will be, oh, well, he was just going for it and he flew off into the mud. When the girl has to get pulled out of the mud, there is a totally different, almost like a stigma. It's like she's a dumb shit, or excuse me, but a dumbass.
It's fine.
You're good. Yeah.
Be her fault, instead of like she's pushing it like everyone else. She, like, if I have a spin and continue, it's going to probably be announced on the loudspeaker, as opposed to, so women tend to be, just because of the standard that we're held to when we're doing something out of the box, meaning like, something that wouldn't normally be us. If you fail at it, you own it big time. And I can name countless women that have tried very hard to do different sports. And if they don't do well, or they make the same mistakes, like on a race car driver, if you're going to be at the top, you're going to wreck cars. You are going to wreck cars. You're going to be wrecked. You're going to wreck other people. It's just how that sport works, especially at the highest levels. One of the reasons I think we haven't had more women go up the ranks farther is because you have to have deep pockets and somebody who's willing to say, and we're telling people to go wreck cars, but no one that's at the top of the game has made it there without having failure. And we have to break through the concept of it's okay to fail, and it doesn't mean that you're worthless or less than because you wrecked a car. It happens for guys, and I just think there's some standards that are held differently. For me, I'm just like, I don't care what the opinion is. I'm going to keep going. And then a long time ago, I decided I was just going to fund my own racing and stop going around with my hand out trying to figure out who's going to pay for it. So I just kept working harder and earned more money and just paid for the stuff primarily myself, because then you're not serving at the whim of someone else. And I do all my own work. So, I understand the suspension and all the pieces. So I suppose it's probably a bird walk of an answer, but, it's probably a sliding scale. And how do we invite more in? We need to get them out sooner, and we need to make a pathway that they can see a clear role for themselves out there.
Agreed.
Appreciate the thorough answer. Honestly, that's a really great perspective that, we don't really get to hear very often. Speaking of reaching out young, you were just at Spokane. You mentioned talking with the Girl Scouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did that go? Like, what was the topic? What was the conversation there?
Well, initially we had talked about taking my car down there and just talking about becoming a race car driver, but then it was raining like crazy and it really didn't make sense to try and do all that. So I have
You're going to try to drive a Daytona into downtown Seattle or Spokane. That'd be interesting. Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't even that. Again, I'm not street legal, but trying to park a trailer downtown is a really fun thing. It was more about where are we going to do this? So I do public speaking, here and there and different things. And so I had a PowerPoint all about, kind of who I am, where I came from, and what I do. And then I have words of encouragement at the end that have to do with believing in yourself, setting goals, never letting other people define you or tell you what you can or can't do. If it's something you're inspired by, go follow it, go chase it. No one can tell you what you can't be. Like, just go for it. And it's hard. Those words are easy to say, but when you live in an environment where people are telling you, that's not for you, you can't do it. All we can hope is we can get young girls through that to where they become 18 or 20, and then they pursue those things anyway. So it's kind of building resilience and saying, even if you can't do it right now, hold on to that dream, because there'll come a time when you are self-determined and you will be able to follow that passion. So don't forget it and don't lose it. It'd be great for them to all come out the track when they're 6 or 8 or 10 or go-karting or something. But they just need to learn how to be resilient and to make their own way in the world. So that, I have a talk that I go with young girls and help them see what they can do in life. And it's not necessarily just becoming a race car driver. Whatever it is, if you want to be a mountain climber, if you want to be an entrepreneur or, start your own business, like, don't let someone define you. Like, believe in yourself and just work really hard, and you can achieve anything.
So when I was in Cub Scouts in Spokane, and it wasn't a lot that did that, but the Girl Scouts would come and build Pinewood Derby cars with us, and there were about 3 or 4 of them, and it was so cool because, to this day, because girls made it pretty, so they put a bunch of stuff on it, which made it heavier, which made it win a lot more. As guys were in there trying, like my grandfather and I are trying to shave everything out and fill it with lead. Girls are like, it's pretty, it's got a bow on the front, and well, the bow sticks out farther than it means it won. So I remember those. So that's a neat idea. So
yeah, exactly. There's a reason we put our transponder on the nose, right?
Exactly. One more little thing to cross there. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Exactly. Yeah. I have some pictures from that on my Facebook page from being with the Girl Scouts. So if anyone out there wants to see, and they had their Pinewood Derby cars there. So it was
Cool.
really cool. I took pictures of them and posted them all, but they were all there, and it was just wonderful. It was well, I'm an educator too. So, when I got my college education, I went into public education. I spent 25 years working in public schools and started as a substitute teacher and retired in the role of superintendent. So I kind of did a little bit of everything from the way. Because racing, what do they say? If you want to make $1 million racing, start with 3 million, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah, I noticed. I was reading. You have your master's and your PhD. What are those in?
Well, my master's is in education. It's actually in curriculum and instruction, and then my doctorate work was done in organizational leadership and organizational development. So it has to do with I do CEO coaching with corporate culture and building. It's like basically building teams and building people. And how do you? It's one of the reasons I love doing the endurance racing because I've done a lot of that. And when you can gather a group of talented people together and then channel their energy, everybody brings something special to the party. And then if you can get them all heading for a more superordinate goal, which is outside of them, but we're going to win this race or we're going to accomplish whatever the goal is. It's amazing how people will do almost anything when they know they're part of something bigger than themselves. It's really cool.
I have a good friend that does that, actually, Tiffany.
I can't imagine trying to go into and take somebody who's running a company and be like, I'm going to teach you what you're doing wrong. Because a lot of those guys, we've run into them in the car community. Don't listen. It's like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and you're going to have to like it. And it's like, wow, okay. Yeah. So good for you.
Well, it has. You know what? Let's say, let's just use. There's 100,000 businesses. It's basically, I live my life by the law of attraction. It's a core value to me, and there will be people who will come to the epiphysical understanding that my company is not working as smoothly or as it could, and the culture is toxic, or there's places that need intervention, and I'm the CEO and I can't do all of it. So sometimes it's just the right people will come to you. The right people come to me, and I don't have to.
They want help more than anything.
Exactly,
they have to,
because they can see productivity and harmony are not happening. And a company that's really, any organization, whether it be Avance, whether it be Sovereign, whether it be a school district or a private company, when things are clicking and everything is working kind of in harmony, you are way more productive. People are happier. And it's just overall, like, the gestalt of it is a win for everyone. It's pretty amazing, and it makes everyone feel good that they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, so the level you operate, that makes sense how you're able to do as much as you do, because this all adds up. I can see how it built and how you are where you are as a result. So I never said thank you for your service in the Air Force, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you started that. You see, you were in there for what, 8 years, 9 years?
Yeah, nine years. I went in 76 and got out in 85. And the only reason I really got out was in 85 because I was having fun, quite frankly. I was traveling around, flying around, doing fun stuff. But then in 85, they came out with basically a directive that the GI Bill in its old form was a use it or lose it by 89. So if you didn't, and when you're flying around doing that, you're not going to college. They're like, oh yeah, go to night school. Well, I can't do that when I'm in the Philippines. It's just like not going to happen right now. So I chose to just get out, and it was one of the greatest adventures of my life. It was an honor to serve with some amazing people, and a matter of fact, at Spokane last week, we did some rides, like ride-alongs, and we, basically drew names of workers and took them for ride-alongs in our car. And I had a person, a young person. Her name was Joy. She's actually an airman over at Fairchild.
Fairchild.
Yeah. She hopped in the car with me, and she was just, what a pistol of a person. She's screaming all the way around, woohoo, and I'm like, this is great. And it felt so good to know that this was a fellow Air Force person. It was really cool.
Probably saw some of her in you, and some of you in her. I mean,
yeah,
that's cool.
exactly.
I mean, the track is out in Airway Heights, and it's near Fairchild. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of Air Force people that are involved in racing in Spokane. I mean, here too, but there you'd always see them, you know. And a lot of times you see the bracket show up, and they're like, "Oh no, he had to fly out to someplace, so he can't be here this weekend." So,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, and recently, you know, the counties, you know, that property changed hands, and the Kalispell tribe now owns it. And of course, we've, you know, as we were getting ready to host that event, you know, where everyone's fingers are crossed that, you know, they're going to keep it as a motorsports complex. And we were very lucky to have some reassurances from that organization. And one of their tribal council members was out there with us for the whole weekend, RJ, and he was magnificent. And so I'm very hopeful that complex will build. And I'm hoping they build the car community over there, you know, get some kind of a race school going over there where people can get sanctioned and licensed over there instead of having to come all the way to the West, and they can grow that population, because there's a lot of folks from Canada who will come down. There's people who come over from Montana and obviously, you know, Oregon, or at least Eastern Oregon and Idaho. And there's a lot of car enthusiasts in that little neck of the woods.
Well, and they have the infrastructure there, being the drag strip and everything is literally right next to the casino. So,
I was going to say, I hope the tribes around here. There's a lot of tribes have access. They're really close to tracks. Bremerton, the Ridge. Like there's a bunch of tracks that are close to tribes, and I hope they continue to see that as a good partnership, because that's a great way to interact with the tribe, which has suffered. It's been obviously been a problem for many years.
Historically,
so I'm hoping we can use it as a bridge.
Historically, we could have done better.
Yeah, obviously. So I hope this is a good way to bridge the communities more.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the Daytona and the cars you've owned and you wrenching on them and building them. I mean, how did that? I mean, obviously we know you started with the Cutlass, and talk us through what you've driven, what you built, where the cars came from, things like that.
Yeah, sure. And you know, I grew up very, you know, middle class, probably lower middle class. We didn't have a ton of money, so my whole car thing really came from necessity. So if you wanted a car, you bought the $100 or $200 car in 1972, and it didn't always run well. And if you wanted to keep it running, you know, you either took it to a shop and paid somebody. Well, I didn't have any money, so I just learned how to start fixing things myself. So I've always kind of been self-made that way, but I enjoy it. I love learning how things work. I'm not really good on electrical stuff. I'm like, I'm enough to be dangerous. I could, on the flight of the Phoenix, I could help us get out of the desert probably, but.
Well, especially airframe and power plant, you'd be the best resource there.
It'll take off and land once, you know, this is good.
Yeah.
But anyway, I love wrenching. I love building things and understanding how they all work. And, anyway, so through the years, my race cars I worked on with, you know, myself, and you know, probably in the bigger picture, I was married, and so I got married when I was in the Air Force, and my husband was a gearhead too, and you know, he helped me with that, but unfortunately he passed away, and so I just kept going, and then you know, he and I raced Corvettes together for quite a while. He was a member. You ever hear of a guy by the name of Dick Goldstrand Racing? So he would have been with Zora Duntov and the group back in the 60s, late 50s and 60s, very contemporary to Carroll Shelby, that same era of person. Okay. But Goldstrand was Corvettes, and he ran the Corvettes and the Grand Sports and whatnot, like over at Le Mans and whatnot. But my husband was a member of Goldstrand Racing when I met him, and I had been racing already, and it was like, hey, this is like, wow. The two of us.
Yeah. Jackpot.
So anyway, so we raced Corvettes for a while and did that, and we did some. I still have in the garage. I have a '59 Corvette that he had built, and it actually is a Riverside. It's an original Riverside race car, little C production car. So it's out in the shop. It's a wonderful little. It's a wonderful little ride, but it's just kind of there as a memorial. I never take it out or do anything with it. But
did you guys both have your own Corvettes? Like, were you racing separate cars, or were you racing the same?
On the vintage side, we just raced that car. But then once we got into we started racing. We actually started going with the National Council of Corvette Clubs, and we kind of got more into like high and low speed autocross. And then we were going to every party there ever was with the Corvette groups, you know, and they put on some good parties. So
they know how to party. Yes. Yeah.
So we had a couple different cars. We had several different Z06s. My daily driver is still a 1995 that I have 192,000 miles on, and it's out here in the driveway.
Yeah,
I love them.
Cool.
Those LT1 engines, they just run forever. They're
Yep.
sweet, and the car is balanced, and it's what they call a Z07. A lot of people don't know what that is, but it's like a big.
He does.
It's a big brake, you know, sway bar, balanced. You know, they came out with 275 40s all the way around when they were always having staggered on the base models. So it's just a wonderful little driver. Yeah, I ran it on a lot of tracks and did a lot of stuff. So kind of through the years, we did Corvette stuff, and then. Later on, when I was turning 50, is when I actually got into the Cobras. So I was born in 1956. So fast forward, 2006, and I'd been doing a lot of autocrossing. And then, a lot of people, no offense to those of people who do autocross, but it's not wheel to wheel racing. I love it,
no,
but it's just not. And so I kept telling my husband, I'm like, look, I want to go back to wheel, and we didn't want to wheel Corvettes. So a friend of mine found the Factory 5 cars, and they actually made a Challenge Series car. And so he bought one, but he's like volumetrically a bit bigger than me. So when he got the car delivered, he's like, I don't fit in it. He called me up. He's like, you got to come over and hop in this car. And I'm like, I'm in.
Sure.
So I hop in the car, and I'm like, I hate you. So it's like I was turning 50 the next month. So I found a car that had been built by Tim Sharp. He was the editor of Grassroots Motorsports magazine at the time.
I know the name.
It was being campaigned by his son, Spencer. And they had built this car in Grassroots Motorsports magazine over, 4, 5, 6 issues. This is how you build the car. And then they campaigned it. They won the championship out here on the West Coast with it. And now Tim was selling it. So it was in Phoenix, and I live in Southern California near Palm Springs. And I'm like, that's not that far. So I just did an overnight boondoggle, get in the truck with a trailer, and I went over. I saw, I loved it. Here's the money. Paid, and actually that was when, for those of us who are attuned to what was happening in 2006, 7, and 8, the stock market was starting to go to crap. And so I'm a caraholic. So I'm like, you know what? 401k, I'm pulling this crap out. So I just started pulling out $25,000 increments and buying cars. And it turned out to be the right thing to do, because I would have probably lost, I don't know how much, if I'd immediately just let it go. So anyway, I ended up with 4 cars after that. But anyway, I got my Cobra. My husband.
A great investment. That's an investment portfolio right there. Yeah.
My husband hated it because he's like, he's a bow tie guy. And now I'm dragging us into Blue Oval World. And he's like,
"Ooh, okay, I got you."
I mean, fingernails in the pavement, the whole thing. And and he's like, nobody.
I don't know you anymore.
Nobody puts a distributor in front of the engine. It's the stupidest thing. I had to listen to all of it. But over time, God bless. And it was an EFI car, and he's used to nothing but carbs. So I had to become the EFI person. He's like, look, I'll do all the mechanics of it, but if there's anything going on with, this, if it decides to stop running, it's on you. So then all of a sudden, I'm the EFI person. I'm okay.
And this was a Cobra you got in Arizona?
Yeah.
The open top Cobra?
It's a Factory 5 challenge car. And
challenge car. Okay, that's what threw me off. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Factory 5 challenge car. And the whole thing about Factory 5, the 5 in Factory 5 comes from a 5.0 Mustang. That's where the number 5 comes from. So when they decided back in 95 to build this company, a lot of people had been building different Cobra iterations over the years, different chassis, and maybe they only make 5 or 10 of them, and maybe they never get finished built. Well, they decided that what really launched Factory 5 into the kind of like, as they are today, the largest component car manufacturer of anybody, is because they gave people the keys to the kingdom to build the car. So they gave you the chassis, all the, the body parts, the doors, the hood, and all the interior and all that. You brought a driveline, but the driveline was based on a 1987 to 93 Mustang, 5.0, period. you went, and back in those days in 2006, 7, you could buy one for like $500, pull the engine out, wire diet the harness, use the T5 trans and put the 8.8 in there. They made us run 273 gears in the back, which was like, oh my God, I was like 273s. Yep. So they were like totally momentum cars with 200 horse basically. But they only weighed 2,400 pounds. So, so you could, Auto Club Speedway, I'm doing 140, buck 45, flying my way through there. They'll fly even at 200 horse. But so anyway, so I had those, but I have always been a coupe fan. I love coupes, and no one was racing coupes. And so I decided in 2008 to hang it out there and buy a coupe. And, they didn't make a Challenge Series version of it. So there were no door bars. There were no, you had to build it yourself. And so then we ended up building 2 or 3 cars, and we ended up making jigs because other people were like, wow, we want to race those. So I had a set of jigs that were going around the country and people were building the cars. But anyway, I ended up mostly road racing that in endurance races. So we ran I've done the 25 hours of Thunderhill 9 times, and with my own team and all that. So I'm an endurance person. I always tell people.
So you were getting the cars from Factory 5 and then modifying them to make them legal for racing and reinforcing the doors. Okay, got it.
So I just buy it, bring it home, build it, and do it. Yeah. So, and I've had every iteration of, started with the 351 and 351 Windsor, and I've had 331s, 347s. And then the car I race now, like Angels Are Singing, because it's a Coyote. It's a 2017 Coyote, and I've got a T56 trans, and I have a IRS with 373 out of a 2015 Mustang. So it's totally, Guardsman blue, Wimbledon white, from the paint coat of the day, no aero, but underneath, all modern.
It's beautiful. I've
seen photos of it. I mean,
it is stunning.
And that Coyote motor, like I said, that got me in trouble. So
motor.
So I understand what that motor can do, and it just, I'm sure it sounds, just horrible too, right? I mean, it's just.
Oh, it's awful.
That sounds awesome.
But I spent a lot. I've been campaigning this car since 2017, and I've spent a lot of time, corner weighting it, balancing it, making everything just. Matter of fact, I was telling a group not long ago, I put on a clinic at Button Willow for advanced race car driving group. And a friend of mine once told me, and I think this is true, the best tuning tool that you can use on a car is a grease gun. And it sounds crazy, but so many people do not have components that are free. You build the car and you grease it once a year and whatever. But if you have anything binding and you want to know why you're getting mid-corner push or snap oversteer, oftentimes it's like you push the suspension to the point, instead of it being progressive, it's like, oh, and then it lets go, and then boom, you're around, because it's not your suspension needs to work with you. And the car should be totally, I do 0-0 cross weights on all my car, and I scale them every time I go out, and I'm kind of anal retentive about everything being just sweet. This much toe out, that much toe in, this much camber, that much caster. I have power steering, so I run a little more caster than others. So, but I'm a suspension queen. I love it. I love seeing a car just be flat, and you can see people on track. I tell them all the time, if you go to a track day, and you have somebody, if you're lucky enough to have photographers that are there, and they actually will have like a screen, and you can see, for God's sake, go look at what your car looks like. Because then you're going through a turn, you're like, oh my God, it's sitting like this. I've got I'm on the brakes and I've got major dive. It's like, no wonder your car doesn't want to stop. You just transferred all the weight, from there to here, and then you're wondering why you're sliding through the turn. So, and anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole.
But you're driving it, and then you're pulling into the pits, and you're the one that's taking the wrench and making the adjustments. Yep. In a lot of situations, the driver's going, I'm feeling this, and then you're coming back to the pits. So, I think that's so cool in the fact that, there's some sense of if something goes wrong, there's only one person to look at, and if something goes right, there's, just you.
Yeah.
So.
It's true. And I always tend to drive within a window, because as I mentioned before, even when I have somebody that drives my car, because when I was doing a lot of endurance racing, I was giving my cars to different people, and I would just literally tell them, and let's face it, they were always guys, and I'm like, I love you guys. If you go off, like, you're not, we're going to have a CTJ come to Jesus right now because it won't matter whether you were driving. I'll be the one that gets blamed. And then my picture is going to be on the internet in 2 seconds, and it's going to be Karen dumbass.
She caused this wonderful man to crash her car.
Must have been her suspension tuning.
Yeah, definitely.
It sounds awful, but I'm like, I love you guys. Don't, like, besides that, nothing good happens when you leave the surface of the track, my friends. Like, how about we just not do that? It's ridiculous anyway.
Yeah, we should talk about though, because you've had your moments off track. Like you've said, you can't be a racer, like a real one, and not have your moments like we all do, like even when we're not on the track. But
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about a win though you guys pulled off. I heard you talk about 2000. I think it was 2011 in an endurance race where you went off and still managed to pull out the win. And I want to talk about that because that's, from what little I heard, sounded pretty amazing. Yeah, I would love for you to tell that story if you could. Though.
Yeah, sure. It was 2011, and actually the backdrop to this whole story is. My husband, Andy, in May of 2011, we'd been campaigning with NASA during the endurance racing series, and we were using my coupe. And in May, my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And so he went in for surgery. The surgery didn't go well. He wasn't doing well. So we stood down as a team. When he went in for surgery, we were like neck on neck and doing really well in the championship. But of course, May, June, July, August, we're not. And unfortunately, he passed away in September. So, we at the memorial service, we had all these, and I'm blessed to be surrounded by some of the most amazing people on the planet, big hearts, all car people. And they're like, look, we may not win the championship this year because we're really far behind the points. And, but Andy, Andy would want us to go on, and I'm like, okay, I had to think about it, but then they were right. So we rejoined the series and we made up points. And by the time we got to the 25 hours of Thunderhill, we were 1 point off of being in the lead for the endurance racing championship in the EO class with that series. And so my friend Rick Anderson, who was also a Challenge Series racer with me forever, he lives up in Healdsburg. He did at the time in California. Like, we took that car down to like nut and bolt, everything. Everything was new, discs, rotors, pads, caliper. We redid everything. It was perfect. So we show up at the 25, like, we're set. And I had 4 amazing drivers that I'd slayed myself and 3 others. Not that I'm an amazing driver, but I had great teammates. And so qualifying comes on Friday. And for the 25, you qualify at like 5 or 5:30. We go out. So it was already dark because it's first weekend in December. And so one of my co-drivers, I'm like, look, I've had tons of seat time in the car. Just go out and just get us on the board. Like, just take it out, because he hadn't been in the car like ever. But he'd driven tons of coupes, and he like worked for the factory. So he was like very knowledgeable and a good driver. Well, he goes out, and unfortunately he dropped wheels out of turn 7, overcorrected as happens, and then spun the car around backwards into a ditch, and he flipped it over upside down. So now my perfect coupe, 2 laps in, is upside down in a ditch, and they red flag the session, and my car sits upside down for 45 minutes while they're trying to figure out how to get it out of this watery mess over there. They bring it in, and the roof is kind of crushed down a bit. Windshield's broken out. One of the main suspension components in the rear had snapped off, including with a mount for it. So the upper control arm was snapped and gone. The wheels hanging. It was just a mess. And honestly, same friend who got me into the Challenge Series to begin with, he was my lead crew guy. He wasn't driving, but he literally pulled out one of those milk crates and he stood up on it, and it was almost like, I couldn't believe he was like, all right, look, we are not giving up. Like, this car looks like crap right now, but we have spare parts. I happen to have a windshield. They come out of an 86 Jag XJS, which I always carry a spare windshield when we're going to the 25. I had one in the trailer. We had people down in Concord who had spare, because the coupe community is really tight. It's probably like many of the other car communities. Everybody knows, and everybody knew we were doing this. They were following online. So all of a sudden, people started driving in with parts, and welders showed up and worked all night long. And changed all the fluids in the engine. And, we all said a prayer, and at 11 o'clock, they pushed me out and I mean, honestly, it was one of the greatest things. People couldn't believe that we had salvaged the car, and here it's back with, it had broken fiberglass, and we stitched it up and made it look like Band-Aids. And the car wasn't exactly pretty anymore, but honestly, we got a standing ovation just from that group of people. And it's all racers, they're like, oh my God, we can't believe you did this. So I told my friend Rick, I said, look, I'm going to drive until I just can't see anymore, because I'm not even sure how this thing's going to run. It might blow up right now. I don't know what else is wrong. So I drove for 4 hours and 20 minutes or something. And then I gave the car to him, and he brought it back, and we actually won our class, and we won the 2011 championship because we just stuck with it. And it was amazing. And then we went on and finished the 25 hours. So it was the first 6 hours was the last race of the series. So we won our class, it was, I still can't believe it to this day that it all came together. It was amazing people who just wouldn't give up. It was crazy. It was really cool.
I'm just seeing the sidelines from Notre Dame, Rudy. That's amazing. I mean, that's quite a roller coaster of a year. And it sounds like you really, have a lasting memory there to be able to do. Somebody came in. Yeah. We all need those people that are going, hey, you need to do this. This is what this person wanted. So,
well, car people are, what do we see? You've heard this 1,000 times. We come together for the cars, and the people is what brings us back. So it's all the relationships. It's why Cars and Coffee is so popular and all that, because everybody, it's a community, and it doesn't matter what your make or mark or model is. We're all the same. We have a passion for this culture, for this sport, and I'm blessed to have so many amazing people have helped me over the years. I wouldn't be nearly anything like what I've accomplished if it hadn't been for the kindness and generosity and help and hard work of others. I'm lucky.
Well, our unofficial motto for our show is we're a car show about people. So
there you go.
It's not really unofficial, but sort of official, but yeah.
Well, it makes sense. And honestly, I told you before we even started talking here earlier, before we were recording, I'm a huge fan of Avance. I think that what's happening and the car culture that you're pulling together, it's a completely unique niche of people, but people are. It's truly the law of attraction. You're building it, and they're coming. It's that old, if you build it, they're coming. It's in a beautiful, sweet spot, and I love the magazine. Carl Noakes is I hold him in super high regard. I don't know Adam nearly as well. I've known Carl now for probably 4 or 5 years, and I've been blessed by him having captured some amazing images, not only of my car, but just from nature and other cars. I mean, he's amazing. So
he must put on a different, persona when he's around her. That's not the Carl we know. No, of course. No.
Okay, liars.
Yeah. Carl has been our photographer since when we started this before it became Avance, and has been a friend and has made more people probably put more people on the show than we have. So,
yeah, exactly.
We do think, but we also consider him a friend, and any shot we can take at him, we will gladly take.
by all means. That's what
well, yeah, and I mean, with Avance,
yeah.
Really launching in California. We're coming for that area. I mean, we now have somebody in LA, and there's going to be a launch party soon. So it's amazing to watch this sort of spread the right way across the country.
Yep.
And we're looking for somebody in Scottsdale. If anybody knows anybody who would like to help Scottsdale grow for Avance and is listening to the show, please let us know. Reach out to Adam at Avance.
Yeah.
Or just any one of us at Avance, and we will get you in touch.
No, reach out to Adam.
Yeah. I mean, let's put you to Adam.
No,
you can call anyone.
Yeah.
I was browsing your Instagram today, and I noticed something that we share more than cars as a passion too, and that's the motorcycles. Are you still riding?
You know what? I have a couple of older motorcycles, but I don't have. We all have the car or the bike that got away. Mine was an '83 RZ 350 Kenny Roberts special. Loved that.
2-stroke.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 2-stroke oil injected. It was a great little canyon blaster I had. It was so fun. And I was working when I got out of the military, as I was working on my teaching credential, I worked as a service manager at a Honda Kawasaki Yamaha shop. And we were sponsoring some of the TZs and, the sport bike crowd back. And this was like 1986, let's say. And this woman brought in the back of a pickup truck, she brought in this RZ350. And I'm like, wow, that's a really cool bike. I had never even seen one. And so it had been dropped a couple times. The tank, the handlebars going to the tank, and the mirrors were broken off, and the handle, the brake and the clutch were broken off. But she's like, yeah, this young man was renting this room for me, and he never paid me, and he just gave me this bike. And so if somebody will just take it off my hands, and I'm like, well, how much you want for it? She goes, if you give me $50, I just want it out of my truck. I'm like, sold. I mean, it was damaged. It looked, the side covers were broken.
Still.
But I'm a service manager at a motorsports.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think
buying parts at cost and doing your own work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just loved it. It had a little fairing on it. It was just a cool bike. And I fixed it all up. I did all the work myself. And it was.
Imagine that.
Duh me, I sold it. So, like I have, eBay, OfferUp, Craigslist, all set. Like if one comes up, I'm like, I'm buying right now, but to try and find one they're either way crazy.
Those are hard bikes to find.
They are.
That's not what Tom Cruise rode in Top Gun, is it?
No.
It's a Yamaha. I know that, but
not an RZ350 though.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember which one it was. Not that.
They're just magnificent little bikes. And then last weekend, Reinhold Young, who does our safety, he comes riding out to the track, and he had oh my gosh, it was a Triumph Thruxton 1986 with a beautiful fairing on it. And I'm like, I hate you. I love you, and I hate you.
I hate him too.
It is.
I hate him too.
That's what Nick wants.
Oh my God. And he does, and he restores vintage cars. And so he's done some things to that bike that are just off the chain. And I'm like, oh my God, like take that away. I can't look at it. It's so beautiful. I love the cafe racers. I just think they're just spectacular. I mean, I like bikes, but yeah, those are so I have a little CT70, so just little trail 70. And then I have a 76 MT 125 Honda Elsinore. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. They're both cool little bikes. Yeah. I like the older bikes. They're just cool. If I could find one of those Thruxtons, I might even go for one of those. Yeah. That was a badass bike.
Yep. And Triumph, like the style Triumphs have, they've held on to that style longer than any.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's a lot of throwback bikes now. I think the cafe racers have really come back into style, but the Thruxton, yeah.
Well, the new Bonnevilles still look like the old Bonnevilles, but
they always have. I mean,
yeah. Well, and Norton, the old Norton, I want to say Commander, those, whatever that was, just really, what was so beautiful about them? They were simple. They were just simple. There wasn't all this, drama to them. It was just pure, and they were just built to, get out there and go have fun.
You need to see if you can find a Honda Monkey to ride. Dan and I both have Honda Monkeys, and we go trail riding on them. It's miles per miles, but we talk about it all the time. But it's I don't even know that I've heard of that. I'll have to. So it's like the old like the original Monkey was a 50cc. They're now 125. They're the same frame and engine as like the Grom and stuff like that, but they're vintage looking. The high bars,
metal tank, chrome bars.
It's so much fun. Yeah. So much fun.
So if you like the CT70, you'll love it.
That's going to be my new search. I'll add that to my eBay and Craigslist.
Well, if you're in Seattle, you find us, and we have 3 of them between us, and you can come for a ride.
Yeah, I'll be up there for
done deal.
Be careful what you offer, because I'm there.
No, I mean
for historics. Sovereign Historics, Pacific Northwest Historics is happening July 1, 2, 3. So my rig is still up there. I hopped a flight back down here because fuel prices are stupid. So I left my rig up there. So my rig's over in Spokane. I'm bringing my grandson up. My grandson just turned 14, but with Vara down here, which is our vintage group, they allow 13-year-olds with a full race car. Like if you have the full race car, all the suit and everything, you can actually go out and earn your license at 13. So he did this. He did the school in January. We put on a race school down here, and you can get sanctioned and licensed. So he did the school in January. And he's going, I'm taking him for his medical on Tuesday, and I'm hoping to get him on track by probably in July to go do some track days. So it'll be fun for him.
So he's got the bug then. You've transferred it successfully, and he has that love.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Well, and to his credit, because I told him, it's funny, and some other people who might watch this someday, even you guys might. So you have kids, and then they kind of figure out that you have these cars, and they're like, so one day we were all over doing some barbecue thing, and he's like, and my name isn't Grandma, I'm Gaw. It's like G-A-H, Gaw. Yeah, that's what he called me when I was a baby, and that's it. He's like, hey, Gaw, so what's going to happen to all these cars, like, when you're not around? And I'm like, well, Evan, and he was like 8. I said, Evan, there's like, there's nobody in my family right now who really has the interest, and I might go to, the shelter, I might send him off to ASPCA to auction, He's like, what? So I'm like, yeah, like, if you want to help me learn how to field the coupe, because that's what I had at the time, I was racing it. I said, you have to learn everything about it. Like, you're not even getting in anything that I own until you know everything about it. You've laid underneath it. You've been filthy dirty. And so from that day on, he's been over here helping me. And he earned it at 14 to go out and drive. And a good friend of mine had a little, get this, Saturn. So an Saturn S2 endurance racing car, be like a Lucky Dog car, basically. A really fun little car. She was getting rid of it, so I picked that up from her. So he did the school in this little Saturn, this little stick shift, so he had to learn how to drive. I taught him out here in the Orange Groves in my Corvette, my 95. I'm like, at dark, I'm like, okay, we're going to go out for like 30 minutes in the, on this dead end street, and I took him out for like a week, and he was like, yeah, I think I got this. I'm like, yeah, well, wait till you get on a racetrack. So it'll be a little bit different. So anyway, but he at least knew how to shift and could pull away from a stop before he could do the school. So anyway, he's coming up with me to the historics. So he'll come up with me to Spokane, and we'll drive over, and he's going to be my crew guy.
I identify with that more than you know. I have a 1959 Triumph TR3 sports car from my grandfather, and I wasn't allowed to touch it until I knew everything about it. And I mean, now it's my pride and joy. And what he didn't tell me is that it breaks. It's British and it breaks all the time. But other than that, so. But yeah, I understand that. That's a wonderful story.
Yeah. Sounds like he's already aware how cool his grandma is, though.
Yeah.
He's, to him, I don't even think he thinks that at all. I think I have two little. Do you guys do any iRacing? You ever do any of that?
No.
Okay, so
I know what it is, of course. I know iRacing, but
what's the most inexpensive iRacing setup you can probably have? So I bought the really inexpensive gaming computer, like I think it was like $1,200, but that's not. Some of them are $10,000. These big ones.
Right. Yeah.
So I picked up like a $1,200 this. I picked up the little Logitech G29 wheel, and and the shifter, and and I bought a little cage that you could buy. It was like $220. Anyway, I have like $1,800 total. And the whole thing. And then I was like, hey, so when COVID hit, we started doing iRacing, and I had just the one setup. And then he's like, well, I want to race with you. So then further into COVID, I bought just another same thing, which luckily I got it right before they were like totally out of stock. But he and I race each other all the time. So we have so much fun. Yeah. And it's just a blast. And so he'll come over here and we'll iRace, and then we'll go out and play in the garage. And he's just really fun. I'm lucky. He's a great guy.
That sounds really cool. What a fun way to grow up too.
Yeah. Makes me miss my childhood, but yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just me, myself, and I, so you're like, when I need a hand doing something, like, I'm like, you're coming over today because I can't seem to put a brand new radiator in and do all this from underneath over here. So get in here. So he'll help.
Small hands, quick work.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's had to learn all the tools, and he didn't know anything when we started. I'm like, I need this or that. And he's like,
and that would be where? In which drawer?
Well, he's got a hell of a mentor. I mean, that's most of us, just figuring out, like, now it's, YouTube Academy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 100%. I mean, and that doesn't even. Yeah. I feel like people on YouTube skip steps purposely, just because then you're like, wait a minute, how did you get from A to C? Like, we're missing something here. So
I prefer, Matt Mormon from Obsessed Garage.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about his show, which is some people don't like it at all, and I love it, is that he goes through the steps of how frustrating it can be to get it wrong and have incomplete directions. And his videos are exceptionally long as a result. But I feel like he's the only one who's actually covering the real experience. Because you watch like a produced show and you're like, oh, they made that super easy to put in this brand new suspension under this vehicle. And you're like, oh, I can do that. And you get out there and you're like, I can't do that.
Oh yeah, his videos are like 6 hours long, but you'll get it done right.
Yeah.
So,
The title of the show could be like "In Full Disclosure."
Yeah.
This is how it
Yeah.
works. And well, like the magic of TV, I was lucky to I don't know when it was 2016 or some 15, 16. There's a show called Detroit Muscle that I don't even know if it's still on or not. But so we had 5 girls build a Cobra in 5 days on that show. So we all flew into Franklin, Tennessee. We were at RTM Productions there. And, it's the magic of TV because there is no real way to build a car in 5 days, let's face it. So we did no paint or body work. That was like done, and then they made the mistake, and I love them. This is full disclosure. They were like, well, we're going to help the girls out, and we're going to drill, pre-drill the panels. But you know what transport happens and you take those panels off, they don't fit, there's a lot of tweaking. And so we had asked them, like, don't do that because at least for me, I knew it's like, let's not, please don't. And so some of those panels in that car under the flooring, under the carpet is like, they have like dual holes that are like a 1/4 inch off because everything tweaked. And I'm like, this looks like crap, but oh, well, let's put the soundproofing on and cover it and go with God.
Don't drive it. Don't put your foot there. Yeah.
Just let it go. I mean, but that's all the magic of, the magic of TV. I also was lucky. I was on, there's a show called All Girls Garage with Bogey. And so I got to go down there. We actually dropped a 427 engine in a Superformance. Superformance they build a great car. So, like I said, I think I said before, I'm non-denominational. I love them all. I don't care what iteration of them, and I don't care. I have an Amc Amx out here in the
cool.
In my shop. It was also a Riverside car. Yeah, I was looking for a Goldstrand car, and what I wanted was a 1970 Javelin SST, like a Mark Donahue version. And I was this was back in 7 or 8. It was when I was pulling money out of my 401. I'm like, I'm going to find one of these and just throw it in the back of the shop. But I didn't really want an AMX. But then when I was scrolling through the eBay ad, it said set up by Dick Goldstrand for racing at Riverside. And I was like, let me go back here and look. So I went down to Costa Mesa, and a guy had it sit in the back of the shop. It wasn't running, but it's a 390 4-speed Go-Pack car. And I did a full resto mod on it, and it's sitting out there with 525 horse.
Good Lord.
Dang.
It's a great little car.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a fun car. So that's there. That's the one my grandson actually thinks he's going to like. That's what when he goes, when I vintage race, can I race the AMX? I'm like, now. Maybe.
I love you a lot. Not that much.
Another good friend of mine had because he's not going to race the Saturn in vintage like right now. And I want him to vintage race because there's some really good reasons to vintage race as opposed to wheel to wheel. And, no offense to other organizations, but in theory, we're a non-contact sport. In theory, doesn't always happen that way. But
Rubbin's racing.
But I'd rather have him racing with me. So a really, really good friend of mine had a little Alpha Berlina. His name was Tom Leeming. He had it in the back of his shop, or he built it from he was like a total frame off resto. It had been a rust bucket, and he really put a ton of work on it. And he has other Alphas that he races along with. He now has a Daytona Coupe that he runs. And he's like, if Evan wants to run this little Alpha, so I worked a deal with him. And so I have this little Alpha Berlina sitting in the back, and that'll be Evan's car when the time comes. And it's a lovely little sedan, 4-door, beautiful little thing. But that's going to be the car that he gets to run. He's not getting in my Daytona Coupe tomorrow.
There's a lot of car. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean,
if he's learning to drive and getting his license at 13, he'll be in that coupe sooner or later.
He'll be in, but he's going to have to do 3 full years. I want him to be the thing has 132 horsepower. It's like you go learn how to momentum drive, you learn how to control, You learn, how to your racecraft. How to be a good race car driver, how to be safe, how to be kind to your competitors. That there's a lot to racing, and it's not just get out there and bully everybody around. It's an art, it's a science, and there's just some magic that happens when it goes well. And I want him to know that before he gets to get in anything with a lot of horsepower.
Yeah, learn to drive a slow car fast, and then we'll go from there.
Well, we say power corrupts, right? If you get a high horsepower car and then you rely on it, and really fast people can drive a really low horsepower car fast.
Extremely fast, yeah.
Well, speaking of that advice, what I want to ask you one last thing. If you have any big advice for somebody new coming into this, man or woman, no matter what you identify as, what advice would you put it as? Would you put out there?
Well, I think one of the things that I see happens for people is, of course, if you don't know what you want to do, you just say, I want to go do this, then see if you can figure out, if you can narrow down some lane to get in to start with, but then follow that lane to where you become good at it. Because people have the bright, shiny object syndrome, and they start this and they go to that, and they never really become good at anything. And so at least if you're going to invest in something, or go out to a race, if you want to become a race car driver, like, the analogy with, if you want to be a fisherman, you'd probably go to the lake. If you want to race cars, get out to a track, get out to an event, find out the car clubs that are near you, and just go. And don't have any fear of asking questions, because most of the people in our car culture are more than happy to answer questions. I'd say, especially, we've evolved as a community in, let's say, over 30 years, and we don't really have, nearly as much of that, don't ask dumb questions. No, honestly, it's a really welcoming community. And once you're in it, even if you're not sure what you want to do, just get out there. Be brave enough to take the first step. And then if you're not sure what you want to do, try something. And if it feels like you hate it, then obviously immediately change. But, just start making friends, ask questions, and get out there. I mean, that's really, and then the other advice I'd have, because I coach a lot of young people. If you're 16 years old right now, I love you. You're not going to be in Formula One. I'll just have to burst your bubble. It's probably not going to happen. I love you, but Max Verstappen.
Yeah, there goes my dreams.
Max Verstappen was ready for a ride when he was 16. They were just waiting for him to become of age. I guarantee you, he started when he was, probably at his house on some little push toy, and he's been driving something since he could walk, probably. And real people who, and I'm, Formula One is the penultimate, let's say, place to be, but there's a lot of places in between to go. So you can, there's IMSA stuff, and there's, world endurance stuff, and, there's a lot of stuff going on in Europe. There's formula cars, there's people that love the formulas, and there's people that love sedans, and people that love, there's something out there for everybody. Just get out there and go. Don't be afraid. And when somebody offers you an opportunity, say yes and do it scared.
Yeah. Well,
I like that phrase. Say yes and do it scared.
Say yes and do it scared. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, Avance is definitely a good place to start. If you're listening to this and you're not a member, check it out. You can literally drop into that Facebook group and be like, I want to go racing this weekend or whenever, and I don't know what to do. I guarantee you will have 100 helpful responses that aren't, you suck.
You might get a couple from your friends, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're your friends.
Sure you want to go racing? I mean, maybe we just go to the grocery store first.
Funny part is, if they said I have a minivan, somebody at Evergreen Autocross would be like, absolutely. Okay, empty it out and come. Who cares?
No kidding. I think we've all seen almost everything get raced at some point.
Oh, yeah. And it's more fun because I want that person to do well when they have something really out of the ordinary. There was a guy when I was last time we were autocross, I talked about it, there was a Subaru Crosstrek, bone stock, stock tires, everything. And they just took everything out of the car and went for it. And we all wanted to see them do well.
I like that. Yep.
I'm like, go with the CVT. Let's see what happens.
Perfect.
Well, Karen, I really appreciate you taking time. I know we had some glitches, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us and finding time in your schedule. I look forward to meeting you in person. That invite is real. If we can get together sometime when you're up here, we'll go for a monkey ride, and go from there. So
we're happy to share cars and bikes with you. So please come visit us, and maybe we can do this again in person for the Avance community when you're in town, and you can talk to everybody here. So I know they'd all love it. So.
Love it. Thank you both. This has been a real joy. I wish you well, and like I said, I think Avance is a great thing. So I'm out here cheerleading. Go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, for this episode of the Avance Podcast, as always, I'm Nick.
And I'm Dan. And don't just get there. Enjoy the drive.